Hi, it's Katrina. From chastity belts to worrying about zombies, here are 14 curious facts about the ancient Greeks. Number 14. The yo-yo. The ancient Greeks are known for many wonderful creations and inventions, but as a vase from 440 BC shows, they were apparently masters of recreation and finding ways to entertain themselves too. How so? Well, because this vase shows a woman playing with an object that is clearly a yo-yo. That's right, apparently yo-yos were around in 440 BC, and the Greeks seemed to love them so much that they put them into art pieces. That being said, we don't know what the Greeks called it. However, this is the first historical reference for a yo-yo. Pretty significant stuff. I bet the person who found it was very surprised. Number 13. Diagnosis: earwax. Whether it was the Greeks, the Romans, the Chinese, Egyptians, or any other famous culture in between, there are always unique medical practices that you can find from their early days. In regards to the Greeks, they had a very interesting practice where if you were sick, the doctor wouldn't start checking you out until he had a taste of your earwax. That's right, the doctor would swab your ears and taste your earwax. Why? Well, the Greek doctors believed that this would help them figure out your condition. This started with the legendary Hippocrates, whose name might sound familiar from the Hippocratic Oath. He believed that all the fluids of the body were not only essential, they had a way of revealing the truth about things based on how they tasted. So earwax and other fluids of the body were studied for their taste, and then taught to one another, and thus it became a standard practice until other medical techniques came about. Number 12. The male body. Depending on the art of ancient Greece that you've seen, you've more than likely seen plenty of people in the nude all over the place. You might think that this is just an interpretation, but it's more than that. The ancient Greeks were obsessed with male bodies, sometimes females too, but it was believed that a man's body was made for all other men and gods to see, and thus in cases like the Olympics, men would always be naked. This included working out in the gym naked and rubbing each other with oil and then wrestling to show off muscles. And if you were curious, yes, the gyms in Greece were for men only. Number 11. Female eyebrows. That's not to say that ancient Greece didn't have certain philosophies and beliefs for the female body, because goddesses were also represented in the nude, but they were especially interested in their eyebrows. For unlike today, where a unibrow is frowned upon in terms of beauty, the Greeks really liked them. In fact, the women of Greece would do their best to try and grow a unibrow to show off not only their beauty, but the wisdom that they had. The Romans liked this trend too. But what if they couldn't grow a unibrow, you might be asking? Not everyone is Frida Kahlo. Well, not unlike modern practices, they would just draw one in, using pencils or coal to etch one in so that they wouldn't stand out in the wrong way. Number 10. To wipe or not to wipe. When it comes to thinking about times before modern amenities, one of the biggest topics brought up is about toilet paper. After all, toilet paper wasn't widely circulated until the 1800s, so that's thousands of years of people having to go to the bathroom and not having toilet paper. So what did people like the ancient Greeks use when they had to go? Well, as in all cases of ancient cultures, it had to do with what class you were in. If you were in the upper class of their society, they would actually be able to use a sponge to wipe their bottoms, which likely would have been rather effective. However, for the poor, they had to use stones and pebbles and sometimes even ceramic pots. That cannot be good for you. These latter items were no doubt one of the reasons that the ancient Greeks often suffered from hemorrhoids. And now for number 9. But first, if you are new here, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest videos. We'd love to have you! Number 9. Athletic sweat perks. Greek culture revered their sports athletes. After all, this is the civilization that created the Olympics. But in some ways, it was more than just reverence. The very bodies and fluids of these athletes were believed to be gifts straight from the gods, and everything they emitted was mystical, including their sweat. So after matches and other sports, which remember they did naked, the athletes would actually scrape down their bodies to get all of the filth off of it. Helpers would assist, and then they would bottle the sweat and dirt from the athletes and actually sell it as medicine. The sweat that was sold would be put on people's bodies in an attempt to cure aches and pains. Not so ironically, this medicine didn't get very good reviews, but for those who believed in it, hey, why not? Number 8. They made slaves wear chastity belts. While Greece may have been a forward culture in ways like creating democracy, they were very backwards in others and were strong proponents of slavery. They were also very concerned about making sure that lovemaking didn't happen with their slaves. They actually used a very well-known technique, made popular in the Middle Ages, the chastity belt. If you don't know what it is, think of it like an undergarment, but one that is made of metal that has a lock and key, so in this case the wearer couldn't take it off. It was either that or castration, so often the chastity belt was the preferred option. Number 7. A fine wine. When you think about ancient Greeks, you probably think that this culture loved to have social events and parties, and that they would drink heavily all the time. While it's true that ancient Greeks loved their wines, they rarely drank them as they were, meaning they would actually dilute the wine with water to ensure that they didn't get drunk. In fact, a common formula at the time was 4-to-1 mixture of water to wine. Why would they go to such lengths for this? Well, it's because they believed that the act of drunkenness was to be frowned upon. They associated it with barbarism and didn't want to ruin themselves or their reputation by drinking too much and doing terrible things while in an inebriated state. Don't we all? Number 6. Hand me the baby. If you've seen the movie 300, you'll know that ancient Spartans would survey newborn children to see if they were pure, aka non-deformed. If they were cast away, for only the strong could survive. While this is most associated with the Spartans, it happened in the rest of Greece too, just in different ways. In some cases, it would be the father of the household who would check the baby and see if it was worthy of being in the household. It wasn't just deformed children who would be cast out. If the father felt that they were sickly, they could be thrown out, and sometimes if it was female, they would reject them, for they would rather have males. All children not deemed worthy by the head of the household were cast out into the street. Number 5. Musically inclined. The men of Greece were known to be athletes and warriors, and of course politicians, but what many don't know is that a vast majority of male Greeks, regardless of their social status or job, were very well versed in music. In fact, it's said that most men in Greece knew how to play at least one musical instrument, if not more. Just as impressive is that the men knew how to sing, how to dance, and other musically inclined things, as music was a major part of Greek culture. Number 4. Spartan romance. The Spartan culture was a very intense one, and that applied not only to their training, which led them to be some of the best warriors in the world, but how they got married, and what would happen when they did. After the marriage ceremony itself, the women would be taken away, have their heads shaved, and then put into a dark room. They would then wait for their husbands to arrive to kidnap them, to which they would be taken away and the marriage would be consummated. This was later adopted by many romance novels as damsels in distress wait for men to whisk them away. That being said, while this practice might seem odd, especially now, the women of Sparta were treated much more equally than other women in ancient Greece. They were able to own property and had some say in matters of state. Number 3. Olympics are not for the married. This is an odd custom that was discovered about ancient Greece. Mainly, if you were a married woman, you could not watch the Olympics at all. If you were found to be married and did indeed watch them, you would be killed. Pretty harsh, no? Why did they do this? It's honestly not clear. However, popular theory suggests that since men would do the Olympics naked, that it would be extremely inappropriate. The mighty male body could arouse the married women, and it could lead to a case of adultery, of which the ancient Greek culture loathed. Although this is kind of hypocritical knowing what we know about the Greeks. Number 2. Political exile. Politicians are a group of people that are both respected and despised, and this isn't just from the modern world. Ancient Greece had that problem too. Remember, the Greeks were the creators of democracy, and they made positions to help the will of the people be known, ergo politicians. However, the Greeks had the never-changing issue of politicians becoming corrupt in their position and trying to amass power. So the Greeks had a way to deal with this problem. If the people felt that a politician was too powerful or even too dangerous, and there were enough votes against him, the politician would actually be exiled for 10 years, hopefully to ensure that their influence would be fully gone before they attempted to return. Number 1. They believed in zombies. While it might seem like the rising of the undead is a modern concept, the ancient Greeks actually believed that the dead could rise in an unholy way, and thus they actually took steps to make sure that this wouldn't happen and cause an undead apocalypse. To be clear, they didn't believe that just anyone would rise from the dead. In fact, they believed that only specific people were capable of it, mainly those who were murdered and might consider revenge, and even those with genetic deformities, as they might want to haunt those who persecuted them, like their fathers who casted them out before. So, to ensure that this didn't happen, the ancient Greeks would either burn the body entirely, cremation basically, or they would go and chop up the bodies into pieces before burying them, as well as weighing them down with heavy stones. All of this would supposedly prevent the bodies from rising again. Thanks for watching! Which of these Greek customs did you like the most? Be sure to subscribe and I'll see you soon! Bye!